Bounty Hunter BJ,
What's up with it?
a.k.a. Nino Cappuccino.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Man, it's good to finally sit down and get this in.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's long overdue, man. It's long overdue, man. We've been back and forth with it, but we here. We'll make it happen.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I like to let my audience get to know you a little bit better. You know, I do got a pretty good following out in LA and Chicago. Those are my main areas. So I'm sure a lot of my audience is probably familiar with you, but they might not know your whole story and everything. So, so where are you out of?
From Watts. From Watts. I'm origin, born and raised Kansas City, Missouri, by way of Texas. My bloodline runs from Austin, Dallas, Fort Worth, Kansas City, Missouri, Kansas City, Kansas, St. Louis, Wichita. By way of Cali, the WATTS, Watts. I landed in Watts in 1970 in the Mouse Den in Watts Nickerson Gardens, man. One of the hardest housing projects that exist.
How old were you when you moved to Watts?
I was a kid. I was a baby, man. I was 7, 8, not about 9 years old, 10.
And right to the Nickerson Gardens. Do you remember what
Well,
it was like there at
well,
that time?
it wasn't actually right to the Nickerson. What happened was, as average Americans who have a game plan and a goal to set off to have a better life for themselves and to build a better life for their families. My father was an Army veteran, first and foremost, and he spoke 6 different languages fluently. And he was my hero, my mentor, my everything, my teacher. My first teaching and my first guidance of a teacher came from home first. My father, my mother, and my grandmother. Because my grandmother taught in the elementary school in which we all went to. And so my father set out to come out to Cali following one of his brothers, my Uncle Roosevelt Jr. My uncle came out here and he was an actual Army veteran as well. A couple of my father's brothers went to Army. They fought in Vietnam, like back to back. And so my father set out to come out to Cali to explore with his brother. And then once he came out here, he decided, you know what, I'm gonna make a life for me and my family out here. So in 69, my daddy came out here, and I came out here with him in 69. We stayed in a hotel on Central Avenue in Swan Hood, right off of 83rd. And he sent me back, and several months later, I came back with my entire family, and we actually moved here. So he came out and planted seeds, landed a job at LAX as an engineer. He worked at LAX, and then from there he transferred from LAX to Southern Pacific Railroad, which is where he retired from until upon his death. And that's how we ended up in the Nickerson, because my father ended up buying a whole corner lot of property for Broadway, and somehow my father ended up bellying up and went bankrupt at this time and lost a lot of money. Some around like around $40,000-$50,000 at this time, and that was a lot of money during that time. And so we went bellied up, and my father's dreams was kind of like shattered at that time as far as his goals, because he had bought into another lot with a business partner, which was going to be a diesel lot, an actual diesel mechanic lot where they built diesels and things of that nature. And like I say, something happened, it bellied up. My father lost a lot of money. And so we had already had relatives living in the Nickerson, and we had a set of relatives living in the jungles. So we used to go play in the projects and the jungles when we was young already. So we was familiar with Watts, and we were familiar with the west side of the jungles. Those 2 parts of Los Angeles was our only familiarity that we were familiar with at the time as young when we first come out here. So instead of my father going west to the jungles, he went east to Watts. I had a cousin, like I said, my cousin Cecil was staying in Nickerson, and my Uncle Roosevelt was staying in the jungles, which is his brother. So we ended up in the Nickerson. You know, the rest was history. We ended up in the Nickerson in 1970. Of course, my father didn't get a chance to reestablish those goals and get us up out of there at a length of time that he had set for himself, because his passing came about. You know, my father was stricken with cancer, and I lost my king, you know what I mean? So that just took me to a whole nother level. So I ended up losing my king, my little brother, 17 years old, in between that, and then my queen. So I lost my father, my little brother, and my mama back to back, year after year, bro. So
Wow, when was this?
I was 17, I was 19, going on 20. So kid at
Oh,
that
okay, so
age,
you'd
bro.
already been in Nickerson Gardens for a
Yeah,
while.
I'm already establishing a name for myself and everything by this time. So,
What was it like when you first moved to Nickerson Gardens?
oh shit, man, it was rugged, man. It was rugged but beautiful at the same time. Pro-black, straight blackness, a black community love, people who love one another. For me, I was fascinated with my big homies. Off top, when I seen the Pendletons and the Daishikis and the Afros and the Brims and the hairnets and the Stacey Adams, I became intrigued from that shit off top immediately, instantly. But I knew that I had a different ball game for my life. My father and my mother had already planted these seeds. We already had. My goal was to make it in life, to become a MLB player and an NFL player, man. I played ball hella good. I played football and baseball to the T, and that was my way out, sort of say. Even before poverty, I mean, that was my goal, my overall dream. If it was either that or my backup plan was to become an attorney or fireman, because I was such a great debater already at a young age. I just knew that an attorney would be something great for me.
At what point did you get mixed up in the streets?
Okay, just taking us back, like I said, 1970, we landed in the Nickerson. Come 70, the gangs really started flourishing, emerging in 73, 72, 73, 74. Come summer 73, 74, about when it hit our hood and the name took place for us as far as our overall tag, the bounty hunters. It sparked my attention, but it didn't grab me. It hadn't grabbed me yet. It hadn't pulled me in yet. It just got my attention. My body is still over here, but my mind is like wondering, like, damn, because like I say now, at this time, I'm looking up at my big homies, like my big homie Ray Boyce, rest in peace, all the Barker brothers, you know what I'm saying, Gary Barner, Pistol Pete, rest in peace, the list goes on. So I'm looking at a lot of my big homies at this time who was growing up, who were in their early 20s, late 20s or early 30s at that time, and I'm just a young kid, 13, 14 years old. So what really pulled me in completely was the loss of my parents, bro. And then when I lost my little brother, it was a wrap. I took the red suit from him personally. Him meaning the devil. I took the red suit, told him, give me that shit. I put the whole red suit on, Trey 5'7", and I became Killer BJ, a.k.a. Bounty Hunter BJ. And I just became destruction, just massively, just tearing shit up. Anything that came in my way, anything that crossed my path, and if it wasn't for the Nickerson Garden, and it wasn't about my family, I'm destroying. I'm tearing shit down. I was really with the business, man, when it came out of this B shit, man, this blood shit, man. So I would say 1977, 78, going into 77, 78, 79, I dived all the way in. Now I'm physically in. At first, during those years, like I say, when I was a youngster, because it's a lot of us, we're established like that in the beginning. You're from the neighborhood. When you're in a neighborhood, you're associated with that neighborhood. It's association no matter what. You don't have to be associated as the actual gang member or gang banger, but you're associated with that neighborhood. So I was associated by living in the Nickerson. Now I became a gang member by being fascinated with certain things. I started hanging out, and I'm hanging out with gang members and gang bangers, but I'm still playing sports. So I'm torn between making this decision. But when I took that major loss of my family, it was all heads on in now, because it was like, for a young man at that age with dreams and goals and a vision already, and to lose everything that he believed in, which was my mother and my father, and my other half, which was my little brother, instead of me resorting to drugs, and then we talking about the crack epidemic, we talking about 1980, 79, 80, going into the 80s, the crack epidemic. Instead of me resorting to drugs or doing dope, which I was already strong-minded, is something I would never prevail to do in my life anyway, I became volatile. My drug was violence. My drugs was beating the shit out of a motherfucker or gunning him down, busting his shit open, whatever means necessary, whatever it took. That was my drug, bro.